Okay. Well, hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending. Yeah, we're going to be talking about the Rewrite API. Specifically, we're going to see how to set custom permalink structures for custom post types. A little bit about me. My name is Sergio Esquivel. I am a web developer at Firespring and Lincoln. For those of you unfamiliar with Firespring, we offer services such as organizational culture. We help organizations find their why, because we believe that the why is more important than the what. We also do have services such as print, creative, marketing, and of course we build websites. And one of the platforms we use to build websites is WordPress. So I am very excited to be here to have this opportunity to talk about WordPress. So let's get started. Okay, I want to take a few minutes to kind of talk about the difference between redirects and rewrites, because I feel like sometimes we get those confused. So a redirect is going to take you from point A to point B. So if I were to set this, if I had this on my website, an old redirect, once the user goes and hits that request, that server is going to tell them, hey, there's a redirect here. That old URL now lives here. So there's two requests. And the URL is going to change for the user. On their browser, they're going to see how it changes. That's a redirect. A rewrite, it only has one request, and the URL does not change for the user. So a rewrite is almost like a translation. Like the Rewrite API takes the user request, and it translated it, rewrites it into a format that WordPress can understand. Now let's take a look at an example. So here I have my site.local/doc. So the Rewrite API is going to take this and it's going to transform it into a format that WordPress understands. So what is that format that WordPress understands? Well, it is here. When you go to your settings, your permalinks, the very top one, the plain, that's the format that WordPress understands. So all the rest are here thanks to the Rewrite API. The Rewrite API transforms all these requests. If you were to set this to, your post name or day name or something, the Rewrite API is going to take all these and it's going to transform it into that. So for our example, my site.local/doc, the rewrite is going to take that and it's going to transform it into this. Index.php, page name equals doc. So the user is not going to see this. The URL did not change. This is happening on WordPress. The browser is not going to know about this. So here we have two examples. So if we didn't have those pretty permalinks, if we only had ugly permalinks, sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so if my voice kind of cracks, it's just because I'm not over it yet. So imagine giving this to your users. Hey, go to my site. And if you want to visit this page, go to index.php page_id equals 24. Can you imagine giving that to a user? That would be like, so easy to remember. So the benefits of having the rewrite is that we can, provide ease of use for our users. We can create intuitive and memorable URLs that we can pass along to the users, and the users can remember that easily. With that, we also create semantic URLs that can describe the page content. And thus, we can also create SEO-friendly URLs. Because on our URL, we can have keywords associated with the page content that we have. So let's take a high-level overview of what happens when a user submits a request. Okay, so there we have the user on top here, and the user goes and I want to look at my site.local/doc. All right, so the user goes, submits that request to the server. The server then, if you're running a LAMP stack, such as Apache, is going to have this htaccess file here. And that htaccess file contains a rewrite from WordPress. When you install WordPress, WordPress is going to come here and it's going to write this. It's going to say, hey, whenever you see this request, go to the root directory and look for a file or a directory that matches that. And if you don't find anything, then just go to index.php. So here's my root directory where I have this WordPress site, and I'm going to look for doc. The server is looking for doc, so it's like, well, there's tab, that would be admin, that would be content, that would be includes. Nope, there's no doc. Let's go to index.php. Okay, so then index.php is what starts WordPress. For a typical request, for a request such as the admin, that would be wp-admin.php, or for login, it would be wp-login.php. But for typical requests, that's your index.php. So index.php hits here, starts WordPress. WordPress then parses the request, sends that to the database in a query based on this parse request here, sends that to the database. The database goes and finds that data, and then WordPress gets that data and displays that using a template. So here I have the page log using the page template, page.php on my theme. So this is what it looks like. Now, for this talk, we're not going to focus on this type of rewrites, the ones that you can set at the server level. Where we're going to focus, it's here. We're going to, once WordPress starts, but before it sends that request to the database, this is the area where we're going to zoom in. So if we were to zoom in into this, we can see that once WordPress starts, the WP class is going to be instantiated. Once the WP class instantiates, it's going to create a WP object, and that WP object is going to contain this method, Parse Request. So if you were to look at Parse Request, I'm going to show you this site here that you're probably familiar with. Okay, so if you go to, can everyone see that? Okay, yep. So if you go to WordPress.org and then /plugin _API and then action reference, if you scroll down here, you're going to see this section that's called actions run during a typical request. And then, so we're going to see all the hooks that WordPress is running when we submit a typical request. So, okay, let's scroll down here. We're going to see that the must-use plugins are loaded. The regular plugins are loaded. We keep coming down. Oh, there's that famous init hook that we see so often. And then we see here that, oh, look, WP loaded. And so this is after WordPress is fully loaded. But then look at this one. Parse Request. This shares the same name as our WP object, which has that method Parse Request. So let's click on it. And when we click on this, we can see that this action is executed at the end of WordPress's built-in request parsing method in the main WP class. So if we were to hook into this, so we can see how WordPress is actually parsing that request. And I have an example okay, right here. This is what it looks like. The /log request is parsed into this query variables up here. And also note this match rule. We're going to touch on this a little bit later, but for now we're going to focus on those query vars. So you can think of query vars, query variables, as building blocks for the SQL query that is going to be run later on. Remember that WordPress started, it parsed that request, and then it sent that request to the database. Well, the way it does that is by breaking that request down into this thing called query variables. So here the query variable for doc is going to be page name. So based on that, page name is going to be related to a field in the database, and that's going to be post name. So once the query for this specific site is going to look something like this. Select everything from WP post, where the post name equals dog. Now, before we jump into creating a custom structure, I just want to show you a list of query vars. And WordPress provides this if you go to WordPress.org, WordPress_query vars. So if you scroll down here, this list here is an extensive list of query vars that you can use. So remember, if we didn't have the Rewrite API, this is what we would use. This is what we would give the user. Hey, you want to visit my page? Well, we would use one of these query vars to grab the data from the database so we could display it. Now, some of this may look familiar to you. Like, hey, you have seen this somewhere else. If you have created custom permalinks, That's because here in this custom structure, we have this available tags, and this are called rewrite tags. And as you can see, some of them are one-to-one like this. There's a query bar that exists that is called month num. They can be one-to-one. They don't have to be one-to-one. When we create our own custom structure, we're going to be creating a rewrite tag. So this, you can say that rewrite tags are almost like placeholders for query bars. So if I wanted to, show the post ID, I would use this and put it up there, and that would serve as a placeholder that when the URL is displayed, you're going to see that post ID. All right. Okay, so let us review a little bit. We learned what a rewrite is. A rewrite takes the user request, it transforms that into a format that WordPress can understand. Then, when the request is parsed, we learned that is broken down into query variables. It's broken down into query variables. Those query variables are the building blocks of our SQL query. And finally, rewrite tags can be linked to query bars. Rewrite tags can be placeholders for our query bars. So now, having this background knowledge, we're going to start building our custom structure. All right. And first, I'm going to show you here the end product. Okay. And the screen is small. Okay. All right. There we go. Okay. So my custom post type is called stores. And on stores, here's store B. Lens here just to show you that. All right. So here's the custom structure that I have for stores. It is /store. That is called that /store is going to appear on every single custom post type that is stored. So that is going to be a static. That is not a dynamic. That is always going to appear from all my store posts. The next one is going to be the store state. I want to display where this store is located. So it's going to be /store state. And this specific field, it's set down here with the post meta box here. So if I were to change this to Kansas. Okay, so there we go. It switched that. The last thing, it's going to be the store name, the post name. So as you can see, this is test store B and it says test store A. And the reason I put that right there is because one thing that you want to remember when selecting what goes into your URL, make sure it's something that doesn't change constantly. Because if it changes constantly, then you're going to be breaking your URLs all the time. You want it to be permanent. So, permalinks, permanent. And WordPress, when it adds that post name here, it takes the post title initially, but then it saves that in the post in the database as post name, and then it keeps that. It does not change it anymore because it wants it to be permanent. Even though I change it here, it's still keeping that. I can still change it and force it to change, but that is a reason why it just sticks with that, with the initial one, because it doesn't want to break your link. All right, so this is what we're going to be building. Let me just go to the plugins here. Let me get rid of this because it's going to get in the way. All right. Okay. And then we go down here. Okay. So this is what I just showed you. I have another one here. Get rid of this box. I don't need it anymore. All right. So here's my plugin. Okay. All right. So the first thing, we're going to create a custom post type. The action that we use for that is init. So here we are adding an action to init, to the init hook, and it looks something like this. We're registering our post type, and that takes many arguments. But we're only going to focus on 3 of them. We're going to focus on label, public, and rewrite. Label, we're going to set that to stores, because it's a stores custom post type. the public, so we make sure we can access that right now, you know, on the typical request. So we can access that in the front end. And then the rewrite. The rewrite is an array that takes also many arguments, but we're only going to use two. We're only going to focus on two: the slug and with front. So you can think of the slug here as the same as this here. So you can go to settings, and then you go to permalinks. Okay, that slug field is the same as when you're setting your custom structure right here. So you know how you can add stuff like this. Well, that is the same. That field here, slug, you can treat it the same way. And how we're going to create our structure is that, okay, we have this front called store. So we're going to add that here, store. Okay, the next thing we want is a store state. Okay, let's create a rewrite tag so it can serve as a placeholder for that. Okay, so there's store state. And the last thing is the store name, but you don't have to worry about that because WordPress automatically takes care of that. You know how when you're writing a post and you input the title, and then automatically, boom, it shows you the permalink. And at the end is the post name, the slug. Well, that's it. WordPress already takes care of that for us. Now, you see this here that says with front. I just mentioned a little bit earlier that, hey, the store, this is the front of the permalink. So how come we're setting this to false? Well, the reason we're doing that is because that with front is referring to this with front. So if I were to add this as blog here, and if I didn't set this as false, it's going to take blog and we're going to add it to the front of my custom structure. So it would look something like this, though. So it would look something like that. So this with front is referring to that other field. It's not referring to our own. And you want to make sure that you set this to false because automatically it's set to true. So you want to say, no, I don't want to use that front. I already have my own. So you can set that to false. Okay, we also have the flush rewrite rules right here. And this, you don't want to run this on every single request. This is an expensive function. And you don't want to be running that all the time. The reason I'm running it here is just so I don't have to mess with it. Because we're going to be switching stuff. We're going to be changing back and forth. So I don't want to worry about that. Or if you're ever setting rewrite rules, you know, your own query vars and all that, and if you notice, hey, this is not working, I'm sure I have everything right, my code looks good, but when I go to that URL, it's just telling me that it can't be found. Well, that's because you probably need to flush those rewrite rules. So I'm going to be flushing them on every request, so I don't have to worry about them. But usually you want to have, when you build your plugin, you want to have this on when you activate your plugin, and when you deactivate it, that's pretty much where you want to have it. You don't want to run it on every single request. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is add that meta box for the state, for the store state. I'm not going to show how to set a meta box here because that would take too long. All you have to know, all that we have to be aware of, is that I am saving this store state in the post meta table. So later on when we need it and we retrieve it, we know that it's in the post meta table. So let me set that here. So this is my meta box. This is my custom post type. All right, let's test it. Let's see if we have everything working. Okay, I'm going to refresh my page. And here's the stores. Okay. So I'm going to add a new store. Test store C. And this is test. Okay. Notice that here's my custom structure. Here's my front. Here's my rewrite tag. It's looking good. And here's the store name. So yeah, it's good. It's looking good. It's how we want it to work. Okay. So our next step would be to actually replace this here. Oh, let me just check if I have that meta box on here. It's showing. Okay, it's good. So we need to replace this value here with this, with the rewrite tag. Okay, so if you were to look into the database, if you were to try to find this here, this post, this permalink, you're not going to find that anywhere. That's because when WordPress creates those permalinks, when you request that permalink, WordPress is going to assemble that at the moment you request it. So we're not going to find this on the database. So what we need to do is that we need to add a filter hook that every time our permalink is requested, go and switch that tag right away. So to do that, we're going to use the filter called post type link. And by the way, for regular post, if you want to do this, you can actually use omit this and call it post link. But for custom post types, that would be slash type underscore type underscore link. So let me show you what that's going to look like here. Okay. So first, we're going to make sure that it's not a WP error. This method is going to pass 2 arguments. It's going to give us a URL and the current post that we're dealing with. So we want to make sure also that we're dealing with our custom post type. That is not another one, because remember, this is a filter that's going to run on whenever a permalink is requested. So we want to make sure, like, hey, make sure that you're using my post type when you're going to replace this. And here, we also want to make sure that that the post has been saved. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but just keep that in mind that we want to make sure that it's saved first. Okay, then remember I told you that we're setting the store state. We're saving that in the post meta table. So we're just going to retrieve that. We're going to get the post meta. The meta key for this is store state. And so we're just going to replace, whenever we see this rewrite tag, store state, replace it with the value that's saved in the database. Simple as that. So let's save this and let's test it. All right, let's publish this. There we go. Such a Nebraska. Okay, I want to show you. I'm going to create a new one. So I'm going to call test store D. And I'm going to start typing my, this is, oh, what happened? So it hasn't changed. I thought we changed it every time that it was going to be requested. How come it hasn't changed? Well, remember that that last check that I was doing on my if statement? Make sure to change this only when the post is saved. Well, that's because I am saving WordPress a trip to the database, because if this is not saved yet, why check for it? We know it's not saved. So why check for that? So wait until the user publishes that, saves that, and now you can go and retrieve it. And I don't have to worry about the user ever running into that structure and that rewrite tag, because this is a required field here. I mean, the user cannot publish this unless it says something. So I know that that is going to change. If it's not saved, then the user is never going to see it. If it's not published, so I don't have to worry about switching that before it's published. Yes?
If you schedule a page to be published later, when does it do that?
Okay, so it would be until it is published. So if it's not published yet, yeah. Well, actually, if it's saved, we're specifying if it is saved. So you could change that code here to specify the post status is published. Right now, I'm saying the post name. So that is saved. That is said when the post is saved. So I think when you schedule it, it might go and throw that in. And since that's already there, it's just going to switch it when you schedule that. Yeah. All right. So okay, let's take a look at this post at our store. All right, and we see that hey, that page can be found. Remember that at the beginning, we said that the Rewrite API is in charge of taking the request and then parsing it into vars. Well, we haven't really told that Rewrite API yet what that request means, how WordPress should handle this request. We haven't transformed it into the format that WordPress understands. So let's do that now. Let's use the Rewrite API to add that. Okay, so let me see. Okay, to do that, we're going to use the init hook again. And let me show you the code that's... Okay, so first, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the rewrite tag. This store state that we are using on our custom structure, we're going to replace that. And add rewrite tag takes 3 arguments. The first is your rewrite tag, so there we go. The second is going to be a regular expression to validate the data that is passed to store state. So the only thing we want to do is submit the ampersand that is going to show there. That's the only thing we have to worry about. That third, sorry, okay. The third argument that it takes is the query bar. It's going to be the query bar that it's related to source state. Remember that I said that rewrite tags are almost like placeholders for query bars? Well, this third argument is where we can specify, hey, link this rewrite tag to store state. That's going to be our rewrite tag that we're going to create. So now what we need to do is actually create the query bar, because we created a rewrite tag, but there's no query bar called store state yet. So let's create that. And that is really simple. The filter that you use, it's query vars. So I'm going to go to this function that I have here that is called create query vars here. I saw it. Oh, here we go. Here it is. Okay, so on that filter, we're giving the query vars. And then it's an array, so we're just simply going to pass our own query bar to that array, and then we're just going to return it. Simple as that. That's how you register a query bar. The reason I didn't uncomment this here, I'm going to keep that commented out this here. Sorry, I was pointing to my screen. Yeah, you can all see where I'm pointing to, right? The reason we're not going to uncomment this is because this third argument that we were setting here is an optional argument. And WordPress, if we were to omit this, linking that to the query bar, WordPress is automatically going to take this and it's going to set a query bar for us. We don't have to specify it. The only time that you do have to specify it is if it didn't have the same name. So let's say that I wanted to call this SS. Well, I would have to go in and register that SS query bar. But here it's already going to do it for me if I don't include this. The rewrite API is going to say, okay, I'm just going to set this to the same as your rewrite tag. It's going to be called store name, store state. All right. So let me just test that right away, just so we can see that our query bar source state is actually there. So remember at the beginning we saw that parse request hook. Well, I have an action hook here to look at that parse request. And I'm just going to output it to the screen so we can all see it. All right. Here it is. It's giving us a list. Here's a WP object, and here's a public query bar. So it's giving us a list of public, the public query bars available. So my query bar should be here. It should be on this list. Oh, there it is. Store state. And notice also this one. We never registered this one. This one was automatically registered by WordPress when we created our custom post site. It automatically went in there and created this for us. All right. And, okay, so let's also take a look at the query bars here that is thinking. So right now, the Rewrite API is looking at this and it's like, hey, do you mean that you want this page here? Now that we have that we registered the rewrite tag and the query bar, the rewrite API has an idea of what we want. It's like, oh, because look, now it's not a 404. And the way it did that is because this match rule here. It's saying, oh, hey, this looks like the URL that you were trying to get. Is this it? So we take a look at the match query here, and the store state equals Nebraska. Yes, that's true. The stores, it's set to test stores. This is the one that WordPress automatically added that for us. And yes, it's set to test store because it's in the URL, test store. And it's also saying, and the page equals, well, this is a single post. We don't have a page equals something. So the next thing that we need to do is that we need to add our own rule to match our URL. And that, you do that on the same on the same hook that we have for the rewrite rule, for adding the rewrite tag. We're still good at time.
I have water here, I've never used it. Why don't you have
Thank
the
you.
water?
Thank you very much. All right. All right, so I am adding this rewrite rule. And so we have to specify here the first argument that it takes is a regular expression matching our custom structure. So here we see that it starts with store. That's our front, remember? It's our front of our permalink. So here we have store. The next is going to be dynamic. It is going to be the store state. We don't know what that is, so we're going to say, hey, just omit the slash, and that's going to be store state. The third is going to be the store name. Again, we don't know what that is. It's going to be dynamic. So add another group where you just omit the slash. Okay, and this is how you can interpret this. Remember that a rewrite is a translation into something that the user requests. This is what the user is requesting into something that WordPress understands. And this here, the next thing here we see, is what WordPress understands. So it is index.php, a question mark, stores equals match number 2. What is our match number 2? Store name. And then the store state is going to equal match number 1. What is match number 1? That is, the store state here. All right, so that's it. That's the rule that we had to add. Now to check if your rule is there, you can use that same hook, and we should see it here on the match rule. So there we go. It is now using our rule. So, So now let's take a look at the match query. Let's see if it is still asking for that page query bar. So it's saying stores equals test store the. Yes, that's it, because that's in the URL there. And then the store state equals Nebraska, and that's it. That's all we're passing to our URL. So yeah, this matches what we want. So yeah, we're good on that. So let me get rid of this here. We don't no longer need it. All right, here it is, test store D. So it is now recognizing that our custom structure. However, there's one last thing that we need to do. There's one last issue, and I'm going to show you that by outputting the query that WordPress is running. So if I go in here. Okay, look at this. It's getting all the post where the post name equals test store D. Yeah, that's true. And the post type equals stores. Yep. But it doesn't mention anything about the state. And that's because we registered the query bar, but we haven't told WordPress, hey, whenever you see this query bar, this is linked to this field in the database. We never did that. So that's what we need to do. So like an issue with this is that if I type something fake here, something fake, it's still grabbing that same post, even though, the something fake is not a state that we can choose from. So we're just going to fix that. And you do that with a pre-get post hook. And this hook runs before the query is executed. So at this point, we can grab the query before it is executed and build upon it. So we're just going to use this hook. Okay. And let's ignore the code. Okay. So first, we're going to check that it's not the admin. We got to make sure that it's a typical request. So here we're going to say, hey, if it's the admin, just return. That doesn't concern the dashboard, the backend. And then we got to make sure that it is the main query because there are many plugins that use this pre-get post hook. So we don't want to interfere with any other requests. We're just focusing on the main query here. Okay, and then we're going to grab the store state. And to do that, we can get the query bar, because now remember that WordPress now recognizes that store state. So we're just going to get its value. We're going to make sure that it's not empty. Then our meta query is going to look something like this. The key equals the store state. The value is equals what we grab here, what's in the URL. And we're going to compare this using an equal sign. All right? The relation is going to be and. And so the query that we're passing here, the query that's already built, that WordPress has built, we're just going to grab that and we're going to set our own meta query. So here it is. Query set that meta query to our array that contains the store state. And all right, now let's take a look at the code. All right, there it is. The store state, the post meta key is equals store state, and the meta value is equals Nebraska, and that's what we have up here. So there you go. That's you set a custom permalink structure for a custom post type. One last thing I have here. These are great reference articles if you ever wanted to know more about the Rewrite API. These are great articles. And you can find this on my site. I'm including that plugin. You can find this on esergio.com WordCamp/2019. Okay, any questions? All right, well, thank you. That's everything.